Redshift here, doing my part to shift perceptions out of the pink and into the red. Society, at least at present, cannot run without business and money, and business necessitates contracts, and contracts seem to require force to back them up. But many people think that this means that we need government to solve disputes and have the power to force the wannabe Welsher company to adhere to the deal it agreed to. No, this is a case of the medicine being more deadly than the poison. If a company welshes, then it will get a bad reputation and be destroyed anyway. So companies will avoid welshing, and contracts will be made as simple and clear as possible. No government necessary. But if you do what we have done today, that is have government to settle disputes, then you get tyranny through corporations controlling the government. You get monopolies, you get governments doing all kinds of other bad things like waging war. Instead of government mediating business contracts, businesses could go to a mediator. And if the losing party does not abide by the mediator's decision, then the mediator company will never again work with the Welsher, and then the company will have a very hard time in the future getting any other companies to do business with them, because other companies will demand using a mediator, and if the company is banned from using the major mediator companies, and it's banned by all of them because it's welshed several times with multiple mediator companies, on different occasions, it welshed on this contract with this mediator company, and it welshed on this contract done by this mediator company, etc. Then eventually they won't have any mediator companies willing left to work with them, and then if they want to enter into a contract with another company, and the other company wants to use a mediator company to make sure that the dispute is enforced or whatever, then nothing. They won't be able to. They won't be able to do business with that company because they'll basically be banned from using any of those major mediator companies because they won't abide by the decision of any of the mediator companies. And the mediator companies know that, so they won't do business with them. So then that company will essentially be shunned because it welshed too many times on too many contracts. You see? Another thing I wanted to say, so my whole point being that, government is totally unnecessary to enforce contracts and stuff. So, there's really no reason for government whatsoever. And if you're going to use we need, the government for, national defense and all that, bullshit. A country will be absolutely impossible to be taken over if all the people have, rocket launchers and grenades and claymores and machine guns and all the rest of it. If every single American had stuff like that, think of how impossible it would be to conquer America. Impossible. No matter how advanced look at how well Afghanistan has made it absolute hell for America to try to conquer Afghanistan. They're fucking using AK-47s, a pretty shitty gun, and this primitive weaponry and stuff, and they're still keeping us out of their country. Maybe not out, but they're still making things very hard for us. And we have the most advanced military equipment on the earth, They got pretty shitty weaponry, and they're still making it really hard on us, So if an anarcho-capitalist country existed and had super advanced weaponry for all the people, because the companies would make it, and then all the people would buy it, or as many people could afford it as would buy it. And think of how impossible it would be to overthrow a country like that. Way harder than Afghanistan has been to overthrow by the U.S., right? So, you don't need the government for, national defense. That's clear. You don't need the government for keeping the water clean and fixing the bridges and the roads, because look at how shitty of a job the government's been doing on that. It's been neglecting the stuff for, the infrastructure for decades, and the infrastructure's fallen apart all over the U.S. So clearly, the government doesn't even do its job when it comes to that, so why have a government do that when it's not even going to do what it's supposed to, right? So really, you need the government for nothing whatsoever. This is absolutely true, and it shocks me that more people don't see this. Another thing I want to say in this video is that people think that Dr. Seuss books are absurd, but the government and the corporations and the sheeple and everything else is so absurd that it makes the Dr. Seuss book look like the height of rationality by comparison. The sheeple's willful ignorance and retarded beliefs, the corporations' insane tyranny and environmental destruction, the government's absolutely insane number of laws and corruption and all the rest of it, and insane wastefulness, wasting literally $200 trillion. This is insane. It makes a Dr. Seuss book look like absolute sane rationality, like, math or something. It's totally insane. Another thing I want to say is that there's a commercial for the 4th season of Animal Kingdom where it shows a big giant wave crashing, like one of those huge waves that surfers ride, like that wave that Patrick Swayze's character is riding at the end of Point Break, like a giant wave. Right, there's like a giant wave like that, and then there's like fire on top of the wave, digitally put in. So on this and it shows the wave like crashing in slow motion and the fire burning on top of the wave, right? This is clear Illuminati symbolism. The fire represents the elites, and that's why it's on the top. And red always represents the elites, and that's why the fire is on the top, because fire is red, you know? And the water is blue, and blue is always used to represent the sheeple on the bottom of the pyramid, right? And a wave is sort of triangle shaped, right? And so putting the fire on the top of the wave is clear representation of a triangle with a red capstone, right? So this is clear Illuminati symbolism. So I wanted to point that out. There's also a commercial for, I can't remember what it was, but the commercial was all blue. I think it might have been a Ziploc commercial, but I'm not sure. And then it showed like strawberries and stuff. There was like all blue and then a little bit of red. And this is the same symbolism, like, you know, that most people are sheeple, but a tiny percentage of the population are like the elites, are, you know, savvy and enlightened and ruthless and strong and smart and all the rest of it, right? So the little bit of red represents the elites, and all the blue represents the sheeple. That's more of that type of symbolism. Like I said, I think it was a Ziploc commercial, but it was a commercial for something. It was definitely, well, yeah, I can't remember the product for sure, but it might have been Ziploc, I think it was. Another thing I want to say in this video is that women obey men when it's obviously in women's interest to do so, but if men want women to do something that seems to not be in women's interest to do, then women are not so keen to do it, because it requires some effort, some sacrifice, some self-restraint. And women often can't see the long term, so they don't realize that in the long term it'll be for their own good, right? Women will only follow or obey men when it's easy or obviously beneficial to do so. But because men are wiser than women, this means that women will not want to obey men much of the time, because they cannot see how it is beneficial to them to do so. And so the only way to get women to do what you tell them to do, which is in everyone's best interest, is to force them to obey, by spanking them or threatening to leave them or by other forceful means. Only then will she obey, and only then will she start to see over a significant period of time that her man's judgment is better than hers. Women's irrationality and lack of wisdom and lack of self-control makes it essential that we re-enslave women. And the economics of women being in the workforce necessitates that we take them back. So re-enslaving women is the only option. The reality of economics and female nature mandates that men control women and use force to obtain female compliance. Female submission that only submits when it's in her best interest to do so is worthless, and yet women are not honorable and not rational, and so the only way to get true female submission, ever-present female submission, that is not just submission on a particular issue, but, you know, submission all the time, is to force them to obey. And MGTOW incentivizes this submission by withdrawing affection, provision, and procreation. Women cannot be allowed freedom because they're untrustworthy, and this applies to men as well, men who are immoral, or even just amoral. You know, they cannot be trusted, and hence they do not end up with freedom unless they're rich. If men want to be free, then men must be moral. Another thing I want to say is that there was a Safe Auto commercial that said, terrible quotes. And then one of the quotes was something like, girls like guys who use cryptocurrency. This is clearly anti-cryptocurrency propaganda. This is not the first sinister commercial by Safe Auto that I've seen. I've mentioned Safe Auto and their subtly sinister commercials in a previous video. Safe Auto is clearly in bed with the US government, or else it would not be doing anti-cryptocurrency propaganda, because, you know, Safe Auto has no clear interest in slandering cryptocurrency. How is it in their best interest as a company to slander cryptocurrency? How is it against their interest to support cryptocurrency? It's not. The only reason they would be against cryptocurrency is if they're in bed with the US government, and or they're in bed with the Illuminati and they want to enslave the people. Perhaps the US government agrees to not go after Safe Auto for tax irregularities or whatever if they do what the US government wants and do propaganda against various things that the US tells them to do propaganda against. I mean, maybe Safe Auto is using some like illegal means to avoid paying some of their taxes, and the US government's like, hey, we'll let you do this if you do propaganda for us. So they're like, okay, sure. You know, I mean, there's really, I don't know what other explanation there could be. Or unless they're just, the government comes to them and it's like, hey, you're going to do this propaganda, and if you don't, we're going to look over your taxes with a fine-tooth comb, and if we find anything, we're throwing your CEO and your CFO and your CTO and all the rest of them in prison, and we'll disband your company and we'll destroy you guys, all for tax irregularities that really weren't your fault that much at all. All this because if you refuse to work with us, right? So you can either do the easy thing and do some propaganda for us, or we can go over your taxes with a fine-tooth comb and crucify you if we find anything, even the slightest bit out of order. Right, so then maybe the company's like, okay, we'll do some propaganda for you. So I don't know which way it is, whether they're willingly in bed with the U.S. government because they're corrupt, or whether the U.S. government is strong-arming them to do propaganda. But one way or another, they are in collusion with the U.S. government, whether willingly or unwillingly. And probably willingly, considering how evil the Illuminati is and how many companies are obviously in bed with the Illuminati, because it's obvious because they use Illuminati symbolism in their commercials and stuff like that. I've said this in another video, perhaps unrelated. There's another thing I want to say. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. MGTOW red-pilled cynicism is not nearly as important in an anarchist country, like an anarcho-capitalist country, because your wife will be too scared to cheat, right? And if she does cheat, then you can solve all problems by killing her and her lover. Then you have custody, you have emotional closure, and you've restored your reputation and your self-respect by killing her. And you've also set a good example to your sons so that they don't tolerate cheating from their future wives. And you've also shown your daughters and other women in society that they had better be faithful to their husbands, or else they will probably end up dead like their mother ended up dead. Or, like if you're referring to your daughters, they're going to see that you killed their mother because of her cheating. And then they're going to be like, dude, I'm never cheating on my husband because I don't want to end up dead because of my husband killing me, right? So then it'll lead to less cheating. And, maybe their friends at school will hear that, their father killed their mother, and then they'll be like, God damn, dude, you knew that happened, or that happened to you? And she's like, yeah, my dad said my mom cheated on him, so he killed her. And then their friends hear that, their female friends hear that, and then their female friends are like, God damn, dude, I don't want to get killed, I better not cheat on my husband, right? So then this leads to way, 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 way less cheating, and then such murders are not very common, because not very many women will cheat, because they don't want to be killed. It's pretty simple. Let's see. Oh yeah, and like I was saying, being naive about women is not much of a problem under anarcho-capitalism because, women will be way, way better behaved, and if she screws you over after all, anyway, you just make her pay the price, whether with death or, you chop off her hand or, cut off her nose or whatever, punishment you feel is fit. You punish her however she deserves to be punished, depending on what she did that was, terrible. Maybe she cheated on you, maybe she kissed another guy, maybe she, wasted a bunch of your money, stole some of your money or whatever. Whatever she did that was unacceptable, you punish her how you think is appropriate. Not too much, not too little, right? And even if you were kind of merciful to her, you could still probably be way more severe on her than the law would be. The law today would allow you to be, because the law today doesn't allow you to do anything if she cheats on you. You know what I mean? So even if you did a minor, punishment, like she cheats on you and just cut off a couple of her fingers or one of her fingers, right? Like that's not that severe of a punishment for cheating, right? But, it's non-severe enough to where her parents, once they find out that she cheated on you, they're not going to, get mad at you for cutting off her finger for her cheating on you, But, at the same time, that's a pretty severe punishment in a sense because she's not going to want to cheat again because she doesn't want to lose another finger. Or maybe next time she cheats, you cut off 2 fingers. And then the third time she cheats, you cut off 3 fingers. The fourth time she cheats, you cut off 4 fingers, etc., So then she's going to quickly learn not to cheat. You know what I mean? But yet, because you're not killing her, because you're not depriving her parents of their daughter, they're not going to get mad at you because she's the one who keeps cheating. You know what I mean? So she gets what she deserves, right? Even her parents are going to agree to that. They're going to agree that you are treating her mercifully by only cutting off her fingers when she cheats on you, right? So, you really can totally afford to be semi-naive about women, right? You don't have to be super cynical and red-pilled, about women under anarcho-capitalism because, the consequences will be horrific if she acts badly. Another thing I want to say is that sheeple are too placated, and so we need to increase their suffering by not giving to charity, by not being polite, sponging off the government as much as possible. If you can get on welfare, hell yeah, get on welfare. If you can get on food stamps, hell yeah, get on food stamps. Do whatever it takes to take as much money from the government as possible so that the sheeple have to pay a price for it in terms of inflation and higher taxation, all the rest of it. Then this will force the sheeple to get pissed off at the government, and then we can have some real change, You should also go on killing sprees, not recycle, all kinds of stuff, you have to make the sheeple suffer. So don't be good in terms of helping society because society's just gonna, feed on that goodness and use it to sustain evil. Evil is unsustainable, you see, so you have to make it clear that evil is unsustainable by refusing to be part of what sustains evil, right? And another thing I want to say is that I saw something not too long ago. It's an example of miscegenation propaganda and male effeminacy propaganda. It's a Sargento cheese commercial where there's a white guy and a pretty girl from India, and they're both sitting on the couch watching TV, and they seem like they're probably boyfriend-girlfriend. And then she puts her hand over his eyes at a scary part in the movie, like a parent shielding the eyes of their very young son or daughter during an inappropriate scene in an R-rated movie. Obviously, it's both promoting an interracial couples, is promoting miscegenation, and at the same time, it's portraying white guys as pussies, which in the interest of fairness, I have to admit, is kind of true these days. White guys used to be hardcore. You know, the Vikings and the Scots and stuff. You know, white guys were knights who fought off the Muslims. You know, white guys used to be hardcore. Now they're total pussies, right? I mean, they changed the entire gene pool of the South American continent. You know, now they're just total cowards, total effeminate pussies. So, but still, I don't think that kind of white male, you know, slander is appropriate, because I don't think they're not that pussified. You know, they don't need to have their eyes shielded by a girl when watching a scary movie. That's ridiculous. So that's definitely anti-male propaganda, even though men are kind of pussies these days. They're not that big of pussies. So it's like, I don't know who this is trying to advertise to. Is it trying to get men to be weak? Is it trying to get white women to see white men as weak so that white women go after black guys and Latino guys and other guys? Or is it to, you know, get, you know, Indian and Latino and black girls to go after white guys? I don't get what they're trying to do, other than just normalize miscegenation. But maybe it works on all those levels. I don't know. Another thing I want to say is that true high-level wisdom realizes the indispensable culture of violence. It realizes the supreme nature of self-sacrifice, but does not fall into the trap of pacifism. Self-sacrificial wisdom is only good when it holds evil accountable, when it refuses to let evil get away with stealing, killing, enslaving, etc. Not out of a refusal to take a loss, but out of a refusal to let evil grow in boldness, influence, and financial power. Anything that empowers the people is a good thing, but anything that empowers the elites or the government is a bad thing. That's another thing I want to say. It's too bad that the people did not force the government to make free guns for Americans if they just sent in the steel. The way the government printed up coins for Americans, if Americans sent the government gold or silver to make the coins out of. If I remember correctly, there was a government program a long time ago, probably in, like, you know, the late 1700s, maybe the first half of the 1800s. It was a long time ago. I don't remember when it was exactly. Maybe it was in the late 1800s even. I don't know. But there was some kind of thing that, like, you could send in your silver and maybe your gold too, probably your gold too, and you could have the government print coins out of it, right? So that it became like actual currency, because it would be hard to use silver or gold when it's not turned into a coin, because then, you know, the seller would have to weigh it and all that. You know, would have to do the math or whatever. You know what I'm saying? So it's just way easier to use gold and silver when it's in coins. So they would allow you to send it in, and the government would make it into coins for free for you, right? And then send it back to you. Well, they should have had a program like that for guns. You know, like you send your steel or your iron into the government, and the government will use it to make a free gun for you, and then they'll send it back to you, right? If they had done that, then who knows? Maybe the South would have been better armed, and then maybe the South would have won the Civil War. And again, the Civil War was not about slavery. Lincoln only freed the slaves, I think, 18 months into, or maybe later, into the Civil War. Like 18 months into the Civil War, he still had not freed the slaves, and I think he might have even still been against freeing the slaves. And he offered the South, if they would give up, if they would just like compromise with the North, he would let them keep their slaves. So the Civil War was not about slavery at all. But like I said, you know, like having more guns might have allowed the South to win the Civil War. Who knows? So a program like that empowers the people, like, you know, printing up their coins for them if they have gold or silver that they mine themselves from rivers or whatever, you know, panning or whatever, or, you know, guns, you know, mining some steel or iron or buying it cheap and then sending into the government to make a gun out of it and then having them send it back. Or like Satoshi kind of did the equivalent of that for us. Satoshi Nakamoto did. And we need to empower the people in ways such as this, in as many ways as possible. Unfortunately, you know, Satoshi did that for us by creating Bitcoin. You know, unfortunately, people are getting along without free speech and without true gun rights these days, and so they think that such rights are unimportant, and they don't realize how much better things would be if we did have these rights. People are cowardly idiots, and thus they think that they would be worse off with more freedom, and they don't realize that they would actually be better off with more freedom, and this is a big problem. Another thing I want to say is that, It's foolish to give up freedom for security, but it's especially foolish to do so when the reason we're unsafe in the first place is the lack of morality in society, which is a totally fixable problem. Society does not have to be unvirtuous, and it's expensive and therefore unfair in terms of how much inequality there is to replace the safety in society due to morality with the safety granted by technology because of people being evil. And you usually cannot have communities that are safe because of morality when you have diversity, because everyone acts differently, believes different things, and because of their differences, they thus fail to collectivize. And also, when you replace morality with technology to give people safety, this comes with increased not only cost, but increased danger, because technology can be hacked. The government can use technology to surveil you illegally, etc., etc. So there's really no good replacement for morality, not even technology. Morality is probably an essential prerequisite of gaining and maintaining freedom. Just by a society being immoral, it ensures its own enslavement by technology, because technology becomes necessary to stop people from stealing and from doing other bad things. The morality level in a neighborhood and a city may not be low, but it's far from being higher. And that's because there's no cohesion, no moral rules for everyone, no common goals, no affection for each other, etc. What we need is a morally strict patriarchy, because neither men nor women benefit from living in a morally lax society where cheating, lying, and other evils are tolerated and unpunished. Women are far happier and less anxious and less self-destructive when they're forced to be virtuous. And men are much freer, more prosperous, and have self-respect and self-esteem, as well as the happiness that comes from having a good heart. Vice benefits no one. Virtue benefits everyone, especially over the long term. Another thing I want to say is that in Season 3 of Legion, there was an Illuminati symbol shown, clear as day, unmistakable, no interpretation necessary. It was on the back of an open or abandoned refrigerator or phone booth or something shaped like that, like a vertical rectangle. I can't remember what it was. I just remember it was a vertical rectangle, and I think they got in it. They stood in it, both of them. The guy Carrie, and the chick who played the time traveler girl. What was her name? Switch. So yeah, they both get in it, and then between them, behind them, on the back of it, in the background, you could see there's a triangle with an eye in it. It was in that episode where Carrie goes in to get Switch out of the house where David had the commune after David and the other women have left. And she and him, Switch and Carrie, crawl through the crystal tube, and then they end up outside, and they step into that phone booth or whatever it was, and then there's the Illuminati triangle with the eye in it right on the wall behind them, and you could see it as they're facing each other. One of them's on the left facing the right, and one of them's on the right facing the left, and in between them, in the background on the back, you could see that triangle with the eye in it. So that's clear Illuminati symbolism. I mean, it really doesn't get any clearer than that. This has been Redshift. I hope you listen to me and start watching Blank P's channel and High Impact Flix' channel. Peace Trucks for Promiscuous Men.